Hey y'all, hope you're doing good today. So in today's message, we're going to talk about how to navigate when you can't completely detach from a person or an environment that is very challenging, that is rooted in the spirit of manipulation and control. Right, so we're going to open this message by touching on chapter 4. I told you all that we would skip chapter 3. I had quoted from it before already in a past video, but chapter 4 I didn't realize is actually super short, and so I'll share a little bit of that with you all, and then the next video regarding this book will be my summary of chapter 5, which starts part 2, and the title of that is The Transformation of Fear, so that should be really good. But chapter 4 is called What If? Reframing Basic Beliefs. And the quote is from Meister, M-E-I-S-T-E-R, Eckhart. And it says, "Truly, it is in the darkness that one finds the light. So when we are in sorrow, then this light is nearest of all to us." And that reminds me, in the Bible it says, that God is close to the brokenhearted, right? He's near to the brokenhearted. And that's good. That's good to remind ourselves of that, because as we go into the conversation, it's just, our conversation today is a reminder of just the truth, the reality of how hard it can be to be in a position where you can't completely detach from a person or a group or an environment that is rooted in deception and manipulation. Like I said, just a very challenging situation, right? But I like the way she wrote this chapter. It's very simple. There's just a couple of pages, and she has these little mini headers throughout the chapter that are kind of like mantras, talking about waking up, being a child of the one light, how God is present in all things, and essentially she wraps it up talking about love, choosing love over fear, right? And so I want to quote right here, if you have the book, it's on page 76. It says, "What if pain is also an act of service? When your own heart has been broken, you are most empathetic to the suffering of others. You then become what Thornton Wilder called a soldier in love's service. Only those broken by the wheels of living," said Wilder, "could serve in this way." And then the quote at the very end says, "The power to love and serve grows through pain. I can offer healing to others as I heal myself." Yes. And so being there for one another when a lot of the world out there just hasn't been through the same kind of stuff, and they, even if they try to help, they can't reach you in that same way as someone who has been there before. That's a special connection that you have with other people. And so through that connection, we can just offer emotional support, just to be, offer a listening ear, and also some advice, and tips and how to navigate, these situations. So so that was just a little tangent opener for you all. And like I said, the next part of the book we'll get into very soon. But my main message today, I want to open up by saying this. Some people hold to optimism like it's just the foundation of their religious belief system. It's just they're eternal optimists to the degree, which I always thought I was that way too. But now I understand there are some people who are that way so deeply in their core that they are like the natives that was referenced in this book in a past chapter recently. I shared with you all how there was a large ship that arrived and they couldn't even see it because it was outside of their comprehension, their current paradigm structure, so it literally made them blind to it. That's kind of how I see some people with their optimism. They're going to hold on to it like with a death grip, like at the total exclusion of real truth. And so it's, and it is hard. It really is hard to acknowledge some things, some truths. about how awful and even evil this life can be at times, and certain parts of it, and people engaging in it and all this. So even though we make light, I say we as in myself sometimes, and other people who speak on this topic, sometimes we can kind of try to lighten this topic up. We do that in order to make it more digestible, because even someone who is not wanting to hold on to optimism at the exclusion of the whole truth. In other words, those of us who are trying to be strong enough to face these hard truths just head on, it's still, sometimes there can be a mental block, even if it's unintentional, somewhere within our unconscious part or subconscious part of our psyche. If it's too direct and too harsh, sometimes it makes us blind to things that we need to hear. So I think there's a reason why we try to lighten this topic up sometimes, but it can come across then when we do that as not really all that big of a deal, but the truth is that this stuff is not a joke. The truth is that this stuff can be life or death. It's really, really important. And so we're going to kind of be a little bit more on the serious tone with this one, just with the seriousness and importance of what we're talking about. So yeah, because it's really not a joke. It's not a joke. So getting out of your immediate environment, let me just say that. Let's say that you can't completely disentangle from people that you have identified for sure as mentally unstable in the perspective or in the regard that they are affecting you in a bad way. They're toxic to you. And maybe you've tried working with them, and as you realize you finally came to a place of acceptance, it's kind of like you can't really detach. That's kind of what I'm going to speak on today, okay? So as you can, even if it's just a little bit here and there, getting out of your immediate environment will give you perspective. It helps you to keep your sanity. It helps you to keep yourself in balance emotionally, mentally. And so your atmosphere, depending on the climate, it's critical. It's critical. And I just encourage you to take breaks, a lot of breaks from a toxic environment as much as you can if you can't totally walk away, right? And here's why. You could essentially be living in a mode of mental friction 24/7 or in a mode of resistance. When you're fighting for truth, when you're having to fight for just reality as it is, when people are just rooted in deception and manipulation, they're going to give you that friction. You're not the one creating it, although it may feel that way because they're just so comfortable with lying to themselves and everyone else, and they just try to get you to accept that. And maybe you did for many years. Maybe you just pretended like everything was okay when it wasn't, when you knew this isn't right. I'm being gaslit repetitively. I'm being patronized. I'm being undermined. I'm having my mind messed with in circular conversations, and the story changes from one day to the next, and all this crazy stuff that you go through. It's psychological abuse is what it is. And so when you try, it's kind of like, I think we cope by, is the word placating to this kind of stuff? We cope just to make it through. But when you're able to detach to any degree, it's at that point you're starting to acknowledge the truth, and you've now created friction. And that's why it's hard. People don't understand. You can't just up and cut ties sometimes, and so, or even stand up for what you believe in if you can't cut ties. It's hard. It's hard. So it's extremely exhausting. It's depleting. It's because you are literally having to fight for truth. And in doing that, you're sacrificing your peace. And sometimes it feels like your sanity. It's really tough stuff. So I just want to call attention to that, and validate your experiences. So like in a narcissistic family dynamic, you may struggle between, talking about that friction, right? Between oversharing to prevent guilt. It's kind of like you may be coerced into just telling everything about every day, every moment of your day, because if you don't do it, you're going to be faced with all these shaming tactics where they play a victim and stuff like that. It's like just a very unhealthy kind of enmeshment, really. So, and yet if you do overshare to, pacify them, then it's kind of like, that whatever you shared is going to be exploited and used against you in some way. And I could go way off on a tangent explaining the details of that, but if you've been there, I don't have to. You know what I'm saying. And so just to illustrate, again, they have a tendency to play a victim, to manipulate you through your emotions where you feel guilty even though you have no reason to feel guilty. It's crazy. But to illustrate this, it's kind of like they can undermine your efforts at everything. As a parent, at building a relationship, at building your own friendships, outside of this enmeshed family, which kind of operates more like a cult, really. They can triangulate you with your friends, with other family members, with your child, with your spouse, and they can, in other words, they can tell you things about other family members so that you are like, oh my gosh, that's awful. So you kind of detach yourself from the rest of the family, and these things may not even be true. And so they want to be your only source, your only reference, your only person that you go to for everything. They want to be that God in your life, like I've talked about in my previous videos. And so they isolate you in that manner. Then what they also do is they turn around and tell these other people lies about you, or half-truths, or whatever. They manipulate. And so those people don't want to associate with you either. So they isolate you in that manner, and that they call that triangulation. And I think there's other ways to triangulate people, but and so when you're still in this kind of family system or social circle, friend group, I don't know what kind of social circle would be worth all that. It's a little harder with a family to detach, but you struggle with it. If you can't totally walk away. With narcissistic exes, if you can't 100% detach and totally shut them out, then they try to sometimes create catch-22s for you. It's kind of like these sticky situations to limit your privacy, to affect your efforts at parenting, your rights. They can even compromise your safety through the different kind of tactics that they use. It's like they're still wanting to be in control, even though they shouldn't have anything to do with you, really, hardly at all, if possible. They're still trying to find a way to get into your private life. And again, it's not that you're just being petty about it all. It's that you have things to consider with regards to not just your privacy, but your safety. And people don't understand this stuff. They don't get it. And that's okay. You don't have to be validated. You know what you know, and that's all that matters. But essentially, it's all about control. And then furthermore, the control is typically their main tactic, cloaked in all these other ways, see? But their main tactic is control, and that's not the end goal. The end goal is control for something else. And that's what's scary. What is their ultimate goal? You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's all about isolating you and manipulating you, even through other people or directly. If they can't directly, then it's through other people, circumstances, whatever they can, for control, for this other end goal, right? So you have, when you can't totally detach, what this means is that you're in a perpetual state of exhaustion because you have continual work to do. Continual. If you can't totally detach. So let's take a look. Let's lighten up a little bit on the message. I say all that because I know you may know that. You may be in the early stages of waking up. And if you are, this may kind of be new information to you. And I hope that it's helpful for me to say these things. But And I always recommend that you find licensed professional help, such as a therapist who's been there and done that and understands. This is just sharing, what I've learned in life is just a personal blog. And if it helps you, or a vlog, I guess, with videos, if it helps you, then that's great. But let's lighten up the, the tone here. So y'all know I love word studies. Before I went into my art major in college, I was originally an English lit major because I love word studies and literature and all that, right? Just a side note. But the word atmosphere from the 1630s is from the Greek atmos, meaning vapor or steam, and then you have sphere, right? From Sepharia, I think, Sephira. But vapor and steam, it's kind of like this sphere of steam or fog or vapor, which is why you have a lot of people coming out of these bad situations describing it as being in the mind fog. And that's just it. They create this atmosphere, right? A normal, healthy relationship or family or group or whatever, there is no confining structure there. Everybody is free to be their own selves. There's boundaries because there's autonomy within each person, and yet you can come together and collaborate. That's healthy. That's a healthy dynamic. An unhealthy dynamic is one where everybody's kind of like intoxicated on this vapor, and that creates this sphere, this restraining, constrictive environment, right? We're going to talk about that word environment too. But people who have left these situations describe it as being in, a mind fog when they're in it. And it is that way, absolutely. It's so much confusion. There's no clarity. And so you can relate that to reality. When you were trying to drive or walk through a fog, you can't see very far ahead of you. That's what I'm saying. That's how it's related. So from the 1800s, the figurative use of atmosphere meant surrounding influence, mental or moral environment. So you see how there's this other layer of the meaning there. Exactly. Influence, persuasion, manipulation. So the issue is that if you've stepped out of the fog and you see the deception, others may still be in it. Other people right? They may still be in it. And so it's just like Plato's allegory of the cave. The ones who made it outside of the cave and saw outside of it, when they came back in and tried to explain what they saw to the ones inside of the cave or the fog here to make the tie-in, they were thought of as crazy because all anybody else knew was the fog or the cave, right? That's all people knew. They were constricted within this paradigm, this limiting paradigm. So you're not going to make people understand who haven't been there. You're just not. And accepting that in your heart, in your core, in your mind, your soul, truly, and letting go of that is going to serve you very well. You have to know your truth and just stop there with it. Know your truth and let that be it, right? That's my suggestion. All right. If you try to continue making people aware when they're not ready, it's perpetuating that experience of resistance. And you're already, if you can't cut ties with the perpetrators of manipulation, if you can't cut ties completely there, you're already exhausted from trying to deal with them. You know what I mean? So don't turn yourself into a martyr unintentionally because you just are so passionate about the truth that you think that everyone else has to get it, because if they're not ready to get it, they're not going to get it. You know what I mean? So accepting all this is critical to me, in my experience, that others may live in and or believe in the fog until the day they die. We have to accept that. And it could be because they're just truly naive, truly, they're not able to get it, and they're just innocent, or it could be because being in that fog benefits them in some way. We don't know, right? But God knows the character of each one of us in our heart. God knows that. So rest in that truth. You know what I mean? So one of the most important messages in the Bible to me is where it says, "Behold, I send you out as sheep amidst the wolves." When it opens with "behold," I'm like, we need to take note of that. That's important, you know. And that if you've been through this stuff and or you're still going through it, this is just another little nugget to help you digest all this as just the way it is out in this world. You know what I mean? Behold, I send you. God sends us as sheep amidst the wolves. And furthermore, the wolves are in sheep's clothing. See? So you can't tell who's who. So I just encourage you, after your emotional processing, after you become aware and you get through the shock stage, which is likely the first, was for me, and that can take years, right? So after you get through that stage, then comes the emotional processing. It did for me. So after you get through that, I just encourage you, when you have found some balance, you know, to find and save some professional academic articles and citations for reference if you ever need this stuff. And furthermore, I advise you to have some advisors, and I mean like professional advisors that can help shed some light on your options as you navigate all this stuff. Okay, different situations pop up, whatever. Just having that that person there who that's their specialty. I just encourage you to look into that, right? But that, when I was sharing with you just prior to that, in the verse, you know, "Behold, I send you out as sheep amidst the wolves, and furthermore, the wolves are in sheep's clothing." That's the whole issue. If you just want to kind of really whittle it down and try to just kind of wave away some of the fog out there, that really is the whole issue, period, in its entirety. You know, that's it. Everything else, it's just details. Just details. So don't fight it. I advise you not to fight it. In other words, don't fight reality. You know, I'm not saying just roll over and accept and succumb abuse. I'm not saying that at all. I just mean an acceptance, you know, here that some people really are that way. It's reality. And collectively, I truly believe that the people who value truth, the true people, will eventually find each other, and you can walk together on the path. And that's so wonderful and healing, and it's just a wonderful, beautiful thing. Now let's look at the word environment. So ment from environment means state of being, right? So the definition of environment from the online etymology dictionary is state of being environed. What does it mean to be environed? Well, environed from the late 14th century meant to surround, to encircle or encompass, or the old French environner, to enclose. So you have viron, meaning a circle or a circuit, okay? So I'm thinking of like, I don't know a lot about the military or, you know, battle plans or wars or anything, but I know some of the movies I've watched in the past, you know, they'll, different scenes, you know, where they're in battle, they'll talk about, you know, they're closing in on us, you know, they're closing in, we're surrounded, you know, we need backup, we're surrounded. See, so that's environment. It's strange. I didn't realize it was such a limiting, constrictive type word, but I thought that was really interesting. So you are, when you're in an environment, you're surrounded in an environment. You are in the state of being surrounded, right? It just reminds me of Jesus. You know, I feel like, you know, all the stories we have of him, you know, in the Bible, it's kind of like he was always on the move. You know, he just exemplified freedom, you know, even if it meant walking alone. being in the desert, whatever. He was always on the move. I have this painting of him that I bought on Etsy. If I can find it, if it's still for sale, I bought it years ago, but if I can find it, I'll put the link down in the description. I love it. It's an awesome painting of him, but it's of just his shoulders. It's from the back. You see his shoulders from the back in the painting, and it's just his shoulders and his head, and he's looking back at you, and he's kind of waving like this, like, let's go. Come on, follow me, and I love it. So the word free, I looked that up. Again, I'm sure I've done it like 10 times before, but from the 13th century, and I think, again, anytime you try to find the earliest meaning of words and where they came from and, their roots and, Latin or Greek, whatever, that's sometimes just doing that, just going on this little, explorative adventure like that. You can uncover truths that way. But free from the 13th century meant clear of obstruction, unrestrained in movement, So it's one thing to interpret these physically or materially, but there's also a mental or spiritual element to these terms, right? So a controller, person who manipulates and deceives and works everybody, right, for their own hidden agenda, their own benefit. They try to enclose or encircle you and or everyone that's involved, right? It's almost like they're just hovering over their chessboard, moving everybody a certain way, but people don't realize it, right? Which is why you're called upon a lot of times in these kind of situations. But that's what they do. They try to enclose or encircle people, surround them, which is really like spiritual imprisonment, by cutting off your ability to have privacy, time. They pressure you a lot. They don't give you time for anything, by cutting off your ability to have space, mental clarity, peace. So they're very restrictive, and they exploit your empathy because they play the victim card and try to make you feel guilty if you don't, just give in to their tactics. If they're pressuring you to hurry up and just agree with them, for example, then so that they can get their way, because they're trying to this is their means to an end, but you don't know all this, then if you don't go along with it, if you stand your ground, stand firm, then you're going to likely be shamed for that, right? And it's hard when other people can see the situation from a distance, from afar, and all they see is you responding to the situation. They don't see the instigator. They don't see the person that's worked you for years, and they don't know everything that's happened behind closed doors. That's hard, because sometimes they'll make a judgment on you without knowing the whole picture. You just have to let it go. You have to not care, Yeah, they push your limits when it's unnecessary. And people, like I said, who are unaware, sometimes they'll even defend these people. Yeah, and they're doing it because they're looking at this person, they're seeing the sheep's clothing. That's all they see. The wolf underneath. That's the difference. Okay? And when these wolves wear the sheep's clothing, this is what's really, really hard. Their tactics of pressure and manipulation and pushing limits, all this stuff, these tactics are actually wrapped up, when they say in sheep's clothing, what does that mean? These tactics are actually wrapped up as concern. Even when they think they can still snow you over, it may come off like they're really concerned about something. So you lower your guard, your defenses, and you become influenced. You become persuaded. You allow that persuasion into your life because it's coming to you wrapped up in sheep's clothing as concern or good character, consideration, selflessness, all these things. So defining what sheep's clothing is will help you. I just encourage you to journal on that if you have interest. So the truth is, people mistake true fruit for the outside quality, ignoring the possibility of rot on the inside. Yet even nature proves to us the rot often starts on the inside. So accept this in your mind and heart, as hard as it is, as lonely as it can be at times, and often we can find ourselves alone going through this stuff because we're totally repelled and repulsed by anyone endorsing these people. Even if they're not intentionally doing it, whether they are or not, even if they're not, anybody by extension, you don't want to go there because it's not even just how you feel about it, but it's furthermore, you understand that these other people can be used, and you have to be careful. If you allow these third parties into your life, they may be working for this other person with a bad agenda, even if they don't know it. So let's take a look at the word truth. This was interesting to me. It has Middle and Old English roots meaning faith. I thought that was interesting. So if we as a society take everything at face value because we want to believe a certain thing about a situation or a person or whatever, right? We want to have faith in what we see on the outside, the veneer, right? We can't really claim that as truth. It's a disservice that we're doing to one another to argue over the shiny veneer of fruit without seeing what's on the inside. How do you see what's on the inside? You question things. You don't automatically give everyone the benefit of the doubt, even if you've known them for years, because they may have stoned you over for years. Always, to me, that's what it means to have your own gut, intuition, and intellect and autonomous self be in the driver's seat. What it means is to don't automatically give anyone the benefit of the doubt, but always question things. Always question things. Critical thinking, And so, also the word truth is related to covenant and pledge. And so it's interesting in Matthew chapter 5, just a little side note, Jesus is he's preaching about oaths. And he's like, basically saying we shouldn't even need oaths. See, this is how muddy, he's kind of elaborating on how muddy truth can be in this world. In that he's like, you shouldn't even need oaths. Just let your yes be yes and let your no be no, and that should be good enough. See? Because if you have to have an oath or promise, we're swearing by something, then what good is everything else you say? You see what I'm saying? I thought that's pretty cool. So there's an old word for truth. This is a Greek word called aletheia. And it most closely is translated in English not to truth, but to reality. So the reality is that things are sometimes not what they seem. That's reality. Okay? Or again, how they look on the outside is not always what they are on the inside, right? Again, nature teaches us this. But we operate like what we see is what we get. For some reason, collectively, we operate that way. We just take the face value of something as truth. So, a wolf in sheep's clothing exploits that, and so, again, that Greek word aletheia, meaning reality, also, to expand on that, means the manifested, get this, unconcealed essence of a matter. So see, you have to zoom in. You have to look closer to really get the meat of what's there. The truth of even our very language. And our language is the foundation of our cognition, our putting our thoughts together, and therefore our formation of beliefs, which we then act from. So getting down to this, root of even our beliefs, looking into our language and truly understanding that, again, wisdom is the principal thing, and with all our getting, we're supposed to get understanding. If we start here, we might reformat our beliefs, and that might serve us much better to operate with actual discernment, to not be fooled by the veneers, even if other people are. You have no control over that, So, yes, the Greek word aletheia of reality, meaning reality, and expanded, meaning the manifested, unconcealed essence of a matter. A wolf in sheep's clothing is concealed. The sheep's clothing conceals them. because their intentions are concealed. So you have these three groups of people is how I see it, okay, my perspective. You have people that know this. You have the wolves in sheep's clothing, right? They know all this. They know how to hide. They do it. You have people that don't know this. They truly believe what you see is what you get, right? Which is a very risky and vulnerable way to operate in this world. They don't conceal their pearls. They just put everything out there and they're exploited for it. And then the third group is you have people that know all this stuff and they conceal their pearls. Well, what happens is the wolves in sheep's clothing exploit the people who are unaware to pressure and harass the people who are aware, because they're like, well, they don't hide anything. They don't have a private life of any kind, so you must have bad intentions, when really it's them who have bad intentions, but you don't, because you're just reserving your pearls. You've learned that if you put it all out there, they can be trampled on. The Bible even talks about it. Not to do that. Not to live as an open book, because it is risky. And I'm talking life or death risky. So you have to conduct yourself in a way that translates into being just more reserved. Just more reserved. Just more of a private life, And you have to stand firm in that. So, yes. And don't worry about how other people view that. So, yeah. So, the good news is, all this means is that, you're going to be judged by, 2/3. Like, if you're dividing humanity in regards to this topic into, 3 groups, you have the first group who are working everybody, they're the wolves in sheep's clothing. You have the second group who don't know any better, and they're an open book. They don't reserve their pearls or protect themselves whatsoever. They're totally vulnerable. Then you have the third group, which is, us, who we do preserve and reserve our pearls and conduct ourselves in a manner of being more private, right? So you're likely going to be judged by both of these groups, here and there, because, and the reason is, you're not even hiding the fact that you're hiding your pearls. It's kind of like people know that you live a private life. You're not hiding that, and so they'll exploit that and try to shame and guilt you for that. See what I'm saying? But the good news is, like I was saying, there is, the remaining third, right? I don't know actually percentage-wise how many people, it feels like it's like 2% of the population, honestly, but it's like there is that other group, right, who are now your people. These people are now your people, and this is why they're your people, see, because they get it. So I just encourage you to rest in this and to accept it, and just to stay strong. And I hope that this has been helpful. I hope it's been insightful and encouraging. I hope that most of all, it got the wheels turning for you. And I just thank you so much for coming along to hear the message. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.